Tony from 6-String Country here, back for still another tutorial on the guitar. And today we're going to be talking about time signatures and counting. This is part of our guitar theory course that we're working on right now in production at 6stringcountry.com. And I always like to start these with why it's important. And it's important for a lot of reasons, but one is for learning new music and particularly for practicing. And it becomes more and more important as we improve and advance on the instrument. A lot of times in our lessons, we'll count into riffs, saying, you'll hear say something like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1E into 2E into 3E into 4E into, right? Or whatever the riff is. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this is because we've had a lot of people ask over the years, can you explain what you're talking about when you do that kind of thing? So that's what we're going to do. When we're practicing a riff or a strum pattern or anything, especially as it gets more advanced, we can only use these visual aids effectively if we are able to do it in the context of time. So if you have a collection of notes, or whatever, you could look at that at the tabs and see these notes, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to play the riff right unless you can understand it in the context of time. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, if it's a lot slower than that, you need to know that too, and you need to be able to set a metronome or play with a drum beat or play with the drummer in your band and know how to count that riff out to play it right. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it changes it a whole lot, right? And it affects how we're going to approach learning the riff. So we're going to start right at the beginning of the documentation we have at 6stringcountry.com, right beneath the video player there. You don't have to have it, but it'll be really helpful. I'll flash some things on the screen for YouTube as well. We're going to start with 4/4 time signature. This is the most common time signature that we see in popular music today. All right, and that's what I was just counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4/4 time. And we're going to start by even explaining what the 4 and the 4 mean. All right, and time signatures in general, this applies to all of them. The top 4, the top number of a time signature equals how many beats there are per one bar or measure of music. A bar and a measure are the exact same thing, right? So the top number, that top 4, means that there's 4 beats in every bar of the music. The bottom number indicates the note value that represents 1 beat. And a 4 on the bottom means that a quarter note gets 1 beat. So another way of saying that is there's 4 quarter notes in 1 measure of music in 4/4 time. So let's look at that first example. The notes don't matter, just put your finger on this 3rd fret of low E if you want to play with me. I'm going to play that first measure on just this low E string 3rd fret. This is a G note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's 4 quarter notes and 1 bar of 4/4 music. Just so you know what we're talking about on the sheet music, the D's mean downstrokes, the U's mean upstrokes, and this is one way we write things out at 6stringcountry.com to make it easier to communicate what we're doing. All right. Now, beats can be subdivided. So you might have heard people talk about 8th notes before, 16th notes, 32nd notes, 64th notes. These are all subdivisions of a beat. So the next example shows 8th notes. And there's 8 eighth notes in a bar of 4/4 music. 2 eighth notes fill up the exact same amount of music as 1 quarter note. So it makes sense. If you take that into account, to fill up one bar of music using eighth notes instead of 4 quarter notes, you would need 8 eighth notes, and we're going to do them evenly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now what are those or those plus signs in the music? This is when we start subdividing verbally for practice purposes. Instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, and again, as we get into more and more advanced pieces of music, and especially solos, it's important to be able to subdivide these a little bit so we can keep track of what we're doing. The next subdivision in 4/4 time is a 16th note. And so, as you can probably guess, how many 16th notes fit into one bar of 4/4 music? And the answer is 16, right? And so if we want to keep track of this a little bit better while we're counting and practicing something really slow that's a little bit more advanced, you'll hear me say on the site quite often, especially in learning solos, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And what are we doing there? We're taking 1, 2, 3, 4 and dividing each one 4 more times, so we get 16 counts in a measure, so we can count these 16th notes. So let's try that. That's the third figure there on the sheet music. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. All right, you can keep going with this. You can get into 32nd notes, 64th notes, 128th notes. And, you know, it becomes impractical to start verbalizing that. So really, as far as I ever go on 6-string country is these 16th note subdivisions. But just theoretically, you should know that these notes keep getting subdivided further and further until it becomes really, you know, unpractical from a practicing perspective. So for our purposes, we're going to stop there. We've got quarter notes that we count, we've got eighth notes, and we've got 16th notes that we can verbalize as we're playing and practicing, and not even, I do it out loud so that everyone can hear what I'm teaching, but we can even do it in our heads when we're practicing at home, right? And sometimes it is even helpful by yourself. You're not crazy if you say these out loud while you're practicing these riffs. It can be a really helpful practice tool. We're going to talk about another kind of subdivision in 4/4 time, and that's called a triplet. So if we wanted to fill the space of one quarter note with triplets, instead of having 2 eighth notes, 2 regular eighth notes, we would use 3 eighth note triplets. And before I get too far, why is it important? Well, we use triplets all the time, especially in soloing. Like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Right? It gives it a whole different sound, a whole different feel. And this, again, you know, this gives us a way to talk about these different feels and to practice them. That's a triplet feel. And we can subdivide that into 16th note triplets, which would be more like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and, you know, 1 triplet and triplet, 2 triplet and 2, 3, 4. So don't worry about the notes I'm playing. This is just an example to show you that this is applicable in our real world playing, and it helps us to be able to count into things and to count along with things using that same feel. So how do we count it out? Instead of saying 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, we could say 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. You know, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. Or if we're counting 16th notes triplets, this would be the next example on there. 1 triplet and triplet, 2 triplet and 3 triplet and triplet, 4 triplet and. Okay, so we when we're doing the 16th notes, after every triplet, one triplet and triplet, two triplet and. So again, this is just another way of subdividing this beat that will help us place specific notes when we're practicing with a metronome, with a drummer, with your band. Place specific notes in the right context of time, right? Now that we've talked about 4/4 time and how to subdivide those beats, let's talk about the next most common time signature that we see, which is 6/8 time. And the placement of the numbers on the top and the bottom represent the same things, but now instead of a 4 and a 4, we have a 6 and an 8. So what does that mean? 6/8 time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The top number, again, is the number of beats in one measure or one bar of music. So in 6/8 time, you have 6 beats in one measure, one bar of music. The bottom number, same thing as before, indicates the note value that represents one beat, the note that gets assigned the beat. And here in 6/8, we have an 8 down there. And when we see an 8 down there, that means the 8th note gets the beat. When it's a 4 on the bottom, that means a quarter note gets the beat. When an 8th note, the 8th note gets the beat. Okay? So when we're looking at one measure of music in 6/8 time, there's space for 6/8 notes spaced evenly. Excuse me. Let's look at this first example under 6/8 time on the sheet music. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? We've got 6/8 notes equally spaced in the measure. And 6/8 notes can be subdivided just like we were doing with 4/4 time. The next subdivision of an 8th note is a 16th note. So we can do the same thing where we're counting instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or counting in on a practice session or whatever. We can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And that would be, on our charts, that would be one of those plus signs, just like you see in that next example. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and. We can use triplets in 6/8 time just like in 4/4. So all the same subdivisions apply. It's just a matter of understanding what the 6/8 means versus the 4/4 means, which we've just talked about. So hopefully that's making sense to you. One confusing thing that comes up every once in a while on our forum and in other places is what's the difference between 3/4 time and 6/8 time. 3/4 time over the hundreds of years has been a very popular time signature. Think of a waltz, for example. You don't see it as much anymore. Oftentimes when we have that kind of feel, it's really more of a 6/8 feel. But let's talk about the difference. 3/4, okay, the top number, the 3, means what? How many beats there are in a measure. So in 3/4, there's 3 beats in a measure. And the bottom number, the 4, tells us what note value gets the beat. And so in 3/4, there's 3 quarter notes. There's space for 3 quarter notes per measure. Well, how many 8th notes is that? It'd be 6/8 notes, right? So it's the same amount of space in 3/4 and 6/8, right? Kind of. A main difference is how we feel these different beats and clearly how they're written, right? We use 3/4 for a waltz feel, and the beats are subdivided by quarter note when we're having the feel. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a 3/4 feel. And if you want to think about like a waltz beat, think of kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, snare. Okay, that's a 3/4. That's a 3/4 beat, a 3/4 feel. In 6/8, we give the accent to the first 8th note and the 4th 8th note. So there, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cast no stones. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. very different feels, right? And think of a drum beat for 6/8, kick, 2, 3, snare, kick, snare. You can kind of start thinking about it these ways and start to identify that it is really, even though it's 6/8 notes per measure, the feels are very different. And that's why a composer would choose to write something out in 3/4 versus writing it out in 6/8. So I hope that helps as kind of just an intro primer course on time signatures and counting. Before we sign off here, let's look at these couple of examples. I'll count us in. I'll count us through a couple times, see if you can do it without me, and then I'll jump in and I'll do it with you. Let's play through this first example on a single note. Let's get this 3rd fret of low E. All right, and I'm going to count us in, let you do it a couple times by yourself, and then I will join you. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and go, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and a 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 4. Second example. Let's strum this on a G chord. This is one of the most popular strum patterns that we see on the site, okay? This is another good example of how to read the strum pattern diagrams. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, down, 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 up, down, down, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. All right, let's jump to 6/8. Here's the first example. I'll count through it a couple times. You can play it, and then I'll join you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And here is the next one. Let's strum this one. We'll go a little slower, get on a G chord, and let's strum it. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. Go. 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6.